Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and perhaps even good evening. Wonderful to see you all for another exciting episode of 3D Shenanigans. Mr. Brian's in the house. Mr. Sydney is in the house. Mr. Chris Cox, Miss Julia, and anyone else who's out there watching. Thank you so much for dropping by and spending your morning with me. Like Aaron, for example. Aaron, wonderful to see you. Brian, that's crazy news. What happened there overnight? Overnight the cooling bracket of your main computer broke? That's crazy. I can only think of one culprit that is nocturnal and lives in your apartment, and that is Feline. But I maybe do her a complete injustice. I don't know. Mr. Jeremy, top of the morning. Good to see you. Let's start with some music. Actually, I was thinking we're gonna listen to some quiet piano music by Mr. Jonah Ardecker. Let me know if that is too loud or if it's too quiet. We will soon find out. Actually, as soon as I switch it on here. There we go. I have a few bits and pieces planned for this morning. First of all, by the way, I'm doing okay. Thank you so much for everyone who's asking. Julia and I affected by what might have happened in Miami Beach or close to Miami Beach recently. It's everything is fine with us. The incident of the collapsed building has happened a few miles away from us, not too far away. Those were down on 2nd Street on Miami Beach, and the incident happened around 88th Street, 87th Street on Collins Avenue. So that's kind of, if we were to drive up that road, we would get to that point where that happened. And of course, it is terrible what happened there. No one really knows what it was. My first thought was it was erosion, but it looks like that is not the case. So that's kind of good to know. So we had a similar incident a few years ago, I don't know, 2016, 2017, something like that, where something like a sinkhole happened in the middle of a road. So, I don't know, major road as well. I think it was Collins Avenue, Washington Avenue, something like that. And it was literally a massive hole appeared in the middle of the road. No one could really explain it. My thought is always there's so much building work going on here in Miami Beach that it's just, kind of crazy to put so much heavy concrete and, what are they called, multi-story high-rises up here. It's, we're built on a fairly fragile coral reef down here in Miami Beach, so one of those things. I hope they're going to find more survivors, and yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy that these things happen. Nobody saw that coming. Mr. Emerger, good to see you. Very good to see you. Let's see what we're going to do today. I have a bit of a plan, answering some viewer questions. The first one is actually not at all related to 3D things. It's related to Twitch. It's something that Dorel and anyone who wants to stream on Twitch probably should do. We get these attacks of follower bots coming in and asking us if we want to be famous, and we don't really get that on YouTube, but on Twitch that's kind of a pandemic. So I'll address how you can remove that automatically, so that if you catch these catchphrases, there's an auto bot thing that you can add catchphrases in that will be filtered out. No one can basically post whatever contains that catchphrase. Then we're going to talk about how to make a turntable animation in DAZ Studio. That is a video that I've covered that already, but that's a few years ago, at a time when KeyMade and GraphMade were still standalone applications and they were not integrated into DAZ Studio, so I'll cover that. Then we're going to talk about Spring Dynamics, a very, very cool script by 3D Universe that makes things wobble when you animate them. It's very cool. So I'm going to use my little Toon mouse to show you how to make the nose wobble and the tail and the ears, and it's all very, very exciting. Then super exciting tip from Brian, who showed me by fluke and by accident how to create a funky voxel effect in Blender. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll also talk about quickly how to bring morphs in from DAZ Studio to Blender. Well, bring a figure in from DAZ Studio into Blender, make a change there, and then bring that in back as a morph into DAZ Studio. There's some intricacies, and yes, so that's my plan for today. And then if we have further time, I'm planning to make a thumbnail for this very program, for 3D Shenanigans. Currently I don't have a good one. I mean, it says 3D Shenanigans, but it doesn't look great, so we'll see what we can do there. So let's do the Twitch thing first. Let's see how we can do that. In which case, of course, I need a bit of this. So in order to get these follower bots automatically banned from your Twitch account, what you do is you go to dashboard.twitch.tv. That's the URL that you need to type in. I believe you can also go and log into your Twitch account so that you get to basically this this kind of layout here. This is your stream manager. And here you have this little thing on the left that lets you collapse in and out. So if you open that, so this is kind of for Durrell. Durrell was asking, well, I'm thinking this is going to be good for Durrell and for Chris and for anyone who streams on Twitch to get this done. So then this is the screen that you need to go to, dashboard.twitch.tv. Then under, I believe, was it community? No, it wasn't. It was settings. There it is. And then moderation. That is the area that you need to go to in order to get to the auto bot controls or the auto mod controls. The first thing lets you choose how much automatic moderation there should be. I think the default is a little moderation, so we'll leave that one alone. But the second one is the interesting one. That's the block terms and phrases. So messages containing these terms or phrases will be blocked from chat. And on the contrary, permitted terms and phrases, if you find that your moderation is constantly blocking something that you would like to get through, you can put that in here. But for our friends, the guys from that website I'm not going to name, they're going to go in here. So you go and click on this, and then you add these bits and pieces here, whatever you want. So big follows is I guess that's the domain, and by followers is one of the catchphrases that you can add there. So if I wanted to ban a particular word, like, I don't know, if I wanted to ban the word whatever, I'll go and add that here. I'll just type it out and hit add, and then whoever types whatever on Twitch will be blocked. There's a thing that's called privacy here. That just means if the mods can see if this is in fact a blocked phrase or not. If you set this to private with the edit button, then mods won't see that. I think that's the difference. And so public is good so that your mods can see this is actually a banned phrase. And if you ever wanted to get rid of it, you just go and hit that little trash can icon. And when you do that and somebody types in one of those catchphrases, be that a human being or a bot, they can't do that. In fact, they get a message. Thankfully, one of Julia's subscribers was testing that with us. He said you just get a message that says, due to moderation settings, your message could not be posted. So they don't actually see what the catchphrase was that is blocked, so that they can kind of circumvent it. They can just, they just go do this. Haha. Another internet mystery solved. That is how you auto block these people. So big follows and by followers and wanna be famous. So this is another one that you could do. Wanna be famous, and make sure it's spelled correctly. And then you can add that. So any of these phrases won't ever get through on my Twitch channel. Good, huh? Speaking of Twitch channels, I always thought those who multi-stream have this great advantage on Twitch that they can actually multi-stream if they're not an affiliate on Twitch. So I can't do that because I'm an affiliate on Twitch. So whatever I do on Twitch needs to stay on Twitch for 24 hours. It's kind of a clause. And hey, so be it, that's fine. I like the idea of having different channels for different things. But I also like the idea of being able to multi-stream to Twitch. So what I've done is I've created a second channel to which I'm streaming this very program. In fact, let's see if it works. It is, it's basically my bot account. Let's see if it's actually working. WP Guru Bot, I've called it. And that is currently my second Twitch channel. Are we there? Are we there? Yeah, look at that. I'm streaming live there. Isn't that exciting? And there's the crab. How exciting. So yes, that is, if you want to watch my programs on Twitch going forward, you can do this on my second Twitch channel, which I have currently 0 followers. So it was never designed to be anything other than a bot account that will basically post messages if necessary. But I thought, hey, why don't I just do whatever I do and test some features here? We currently have no transcode options. That's one of those things that you don't get if you're not an affiliate. So I'm into features, which is why I did that. But if you want to follow me on Twitch, on the whatever I do on YouTube, then you can do that on WP Guru Bot. There. That's the Twitch session out of the way. Absolutely, Sid. I thought this is good stuff to know. And it's on YouTube, we have a similar setting, but we don't have the kind of pandemic that we have on Twitch with these auto follow bots, and it's happened to everyone that every 20 minutes or so you get this message, and it's just super boring. So one of those things. How colors are changed with the recursive images? I do not. What do you mean by that? I don't think I know that. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let us go back to Twitch. Maybe just to here. No, I don't actually. Didn't see that. And I'm not sure what you mean by that. But let's figure this out on Twitch. It sounds exciting, Amoga. You always have great tips for me, so I really appreciate that. So that is that. Let's have a look at how to make a turntable animation next. I'm thinking that's a good idea. So the last time I showed how to make a turntable animation in DAZ Studio, that is. Okay, yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, that does make sense. The last time I showed you how to make a turntable animation in DAZ Studio was with an older version of DAZ Studio in which the timeline was not as revamped as it is as of 4.12, I believe. Must have been in an earlier version. So at that point with 4.12, the big change was that the two plugins that used to be standalone things that you bought from the store were Animate and, no, not Animate, it was GraphMate and KeyMate. And those are features essentially that have been integrated into the regular timeline in DAZ Studio. So one of them is, so you can set this on the bottom right here. This is where these things are. On this little hamburger icon, there's a thing called View Mode, and you have the difference between a basic, intermediate, and an advanced view on the timeline. And when you switch this back to basic, then you see that some of the features are missing on the timeline. And that's what our regular timeline used to look like. And then you had to buy add-ons to expand the timeline with these plugins. But I suppose they've been subsequently sold to DAZ Studio, and the code has been integrated into DAZ Studio 4.12 and onwards. So now we have them all integrated. So this is why I thought I'll show you another version of the video, kind of an updated version. This was for Virtual Bees. He or she or they were wondering how to make a turntable animation with the newer versions of DAZ Studio. So let me show you. I will go and bring in perhaps just a regular gray Genesis figure. Let's do that. I always like the gray figures. And let's say I'll use the Genesis 8 female dev load for this. And imagine this is a character and it's dressed up and you want to show her off from all sides. So you want to have something like an animation that spins around like this in a linear type fashion. So what you would do for that is, ordinarily you would think about how fast or how slow my turntable animation is. I'll show you this with 30 frames first, which is too fast, and then we're going to make it faster. So 90 to 120 frames is usually a good guide. So the principle is that on frame 0, your character here, and we can probably give her a little pose as well. Let's do that. I think there's something in the come on, in the pose architect that makes her have a natural pose. So let's go. Let's say this is the pose. Perfect. So the trick here is that on your character with your figure selected, under General Transforms Rotation, this is where you want to go. Parameters tab, General Transforms Rotation, and we're going to tweak the Y rotation of our figure. So on frame 0, we want to have this locked in. So we'll go and set a keyframe. And then on your last frame of the animation, park the playhead over there, you're going to say that this is now rotated by almost 360 degrees. So I always on the side of caution and make it 359. As I said, 359, there we go. And now when you move the timeline slider, your figure is going to rotate. And that's essentially all there's to it. So you're going to set a camera up on however you want to look at the figure, so like make it a square camera or whatnot. But yeah, this is how you then go and turn the figure. So if I go and play this back now, I will see that 1 second is just way too fast for my turntable animation. You could play this slower, you can make it slower in a video editor, but this is the animation that you need to render out. But it's too fast. So for what I think is quite nice is that to do it over 90 or 120 frames. And you can do that by changing the total duration of your animation down here in the bottom left. So there's always, DAZ Studio has this habit that you have to calculate your total duration and add 1 frame. I'm not entirely sure why, but I will go and say 30 frames a second times 4, that's like 4 times longer than it is right now. That's 120 frames, plus 1 frame, that's 121 frames. That's my total duration. And when I do that, I get these little triangles here. That means underneath here somewhere there's a keyframe hiding, and I'm going to go and find it by opening this up. It's in the properties, in the general section, in the transforms, in the rotation, and on the Y rotate. This is exactly where that keyframe is. So I'll go and left click and drag this out now all the way over to the right hand side, so that this rotational value that we've changed here is on the last frame. And then when I play this back, I have that, which is nice. So now I have a slower turntable animation, and that's kind of, you know, kind of getting to the point that I'm liking it. But what isn't working just yet is the fact that you have this, so the rotation kind of starts slow, speeds up, and then goes slow again. So it's not a continuous motion. So if it starts, it kind of speeds up, and now it slows down again, and now it goes and slows down again. And that's kind of the Bezier motion, and that's also known as an ease in and ease out. And that's usually what you want when you interpolate motions, but not always. So in our case, we don't really like that. We want something like this to work continuously. So I want her to rotate at a continuous speed. And that is done by changing the interpolation mode of the actual keyframes. So DAZ Studio can make that happen. And once again, beforehand, you needed that extra plugin for that, but now we can do it for free, which is kind of nice. So what you need to do is on the actual keyframe, so in our case it's the Y rotation, you have to click the keyframe and then right click on the keyframe and check the set keyframe interpolation to linear. So TCB is the thing that we have right now. That's the default. And linear is the one that accelerates or decelerates literally over a flat line. And since we have 2 keyframes, we have to do that on both keyframes. You can either do that 1 keyframe at a time, or you can select both keyframes and then set both of them to linear. And when you do that, you can see that this little icon changes like really, really tiny. So T was TCB, and this little L in the kind of diamond section, that is now the linear interpolation. So if I now go and play my turntable animation, I can see that my lady is going to spin around as if there's no breaks in between. So this is now a continuous motion. And that is how you set up a continuous keyframe animation in DAZ Studio. So all that's missing now really is a camera that you point and some lights. You can leave it all in a kind of static position and just let the character spin. If you have more than 1 item that you'd like to do this with to show off on all sides, then you can put them all into a group and then animate the group instead of the character. So that's another tip. If you had 2 characters, or if you have a character and a table and, you know, a little scene that you've built, you can put all that into a group and then just use the group to interpolate this animation. And then Bob's your uncle, Betty is your aunt. There we go. Turntable animation in DAZ Studio. I hope that was good. I hope that that helped you, Virtual Bees. And that's another thing off my list. I really appreciate all these questions that I'm getting. So it's really nice. I'm very happy to explain this. If you do have anything that you would like to know, either drop it in the chat or leave me a comment here on this video, and we can consider it for next time. Keyframe into what's it called? Turntable animation. Very good. Turntable animation. While we're talking of animations, let's talk about another super exciting animation feature, and that is in fact a product here. Let me show you. That is on the DAZ store. It's a little script by the friendly folks from 3D Universe. It's called Spring Dynamics. And that is something that is kind of shrouded in mystery a little bit. Oh, look at that. It happens to be on sale. Wouldn't you know? That's very, very cool. This is a good price to pick this up. I feel it kind of undersells what it does. So with it, you can, in a keyframe animation, it makes things wobble, and not just a whole item, it makes things on a figure wobble. So if you had something like a belly that you want to make jiggle, or if you had ears that you want to make jiggle, or you want to have something like a, you know, like this guy here. I think the video shows how this guy is being animated entirely with this script with Spring Dynamics. Or you can have something like a zombie that has wobbly arms while he walks. So the effect is literally that from otherwise static motion, this thing will calculate something like this. So that's very cool way of how the script makes that happen. And I've always been fascinated by it, and I've bought it a while ago, and I've always been meaning to make a video about it, and you know, I never got the chance. So now is the chance. Spring Dynamics. It's a very cool script, and I'll show you how it works and what we can do with it. I haven't got anything prepared, of course, because that's just the kind of guy I am. So I'll go and quickly show you what you can do with it, and I'll let you explore it by yourself. So first of all, I'll go and load my friend the Toon Mouse, also by 3D Universe. It's a poser figure, so here he is. Love this little guy. There he is. And I'm going to show you how he kind of walks in place from the side. Thank you so much, Brian. Exactly. And I'm going to go and take the liberty and pin it, if I can. Yes, there we go. I've pinned your message. That's the Spring Dynamics script that we're going to discuss. So in order for this to work, you need to have a keyframe animation. And I've converted one from Mixamo and turned it into an Aniblock. That's available on my Animate timeline. I'll just go and bring that in. It is called, yes, mouse walking, actually. That's it. That's in the mouse walking section. He can do cartwheels, wee hi, and he can do a chilled walk. He can run. So very exciting. I'll say let's start with the chilled walk first. I'll go and drag that in. These Aniblocks I've actually made, but they're converted from Mixamo, so I'm afraid I can't actually share them with you. Otherwise I would totally do that. I'll go and loop this twice, just so that the animation is a little bit longer. And this is now an Aniblock, so this is not something that the Spring Dynamics script will understand. We need a keyframe animation for this to work. So I'll go and right click somewhere on the bottom here to turn this into Studio Keyframes. So bake to Studio Keyframes is how this works. And then dialog comes up, says, do you really want to do this? Because it'll override everything. It's all totally terrible, but we're going to say yes, because that's what we need to do. And now we can see a lot of keyframes here on my studio timeline. This now means I don't need my Aniblock anymore, so I'll go and remove it. And the only thing I'm going to set up is the last frame of my animation is now here, and my total duration is a little bit longer. So I'll just go and make sure that is the same. I can check that on the other side here, on the left hand side. It says total, and then it says my current position. So that's 84. So I'm going to make my total duration 85. There. I'll just do that so that when I press the play button here, the guy just walks and loops. So that's kind of cool. So currently all the movements are static on him, and what the Spring Dynamics script can bring to the party is that certain aspects of his body can wobble. So I'm going to go and use the tail as a good example. So what you need to do is you need to pick the portion of your model that you'd like to add this effect to. So in my case, it's the tail. So I'm going to go and have to find the tail. It's under hip and under tail. The tail is rigged, so there's a lot of pieces to the tail, 17 of them, I believe. And I'm going to just pick the first one because the script is clever enough that it will keep following anything that's underneath it, and will also animate that if we want to enable that. So in order to kick that off, I'll go and find it first. I think it's in scripts, is it? No, it's not. It's in utilities on the Smart Content tab, I believe, somewhere. So there it is, Spring Dynamics. And it's just one icon that when you double click it, so with that node selected that you want to animate, and on frame 0 of your animation, also very important, double click it. Takes a second to load, or 2, or 3. Has it crashed? Dang, brother, that's cold. Where are you? Oh, there it is. Perfect. Takes a little bit of time. And so you see, this is a little weird now. So it's probably because I've played with the values there. Cool. So I've just played around with it to get some different values. So this graph here will kind of tell you how the motion is going to be created, and as you change values here for strength and intensity, this is also going to change so that you get a visual representation. The default values work pretty well, so I'm going to use the animation range, and I'll leave everything else on there. Include follow is something that will make all the other pieces of the tail participate in the animation. I'm going to leave everything as it is and hit apply effect, and that'll now do its calculation, and that's it. So it didn't actually take all that long. I have to go and exit to preview what it did. So now if I hit play, I can go that the tail has indeed started to wobble, and that is just so cool. Isn't that amazing? Mr. Neville, top of the morning. Good to see you, or top of the evening, I should say. Sydney, very good question. On my licensing video, yes indeed, I mentioned that you need an interactive license if you wanted to distribute the 3D geometry with something like the like a Unity or Unreal project or any other Godot or whatever, anything that requires the 3D geometry to work, you need to have that interactive license if you intend to distribute the product. But that is only if you give away some kind of 3D geometry aspect. If you don't do that, you don't need the license. So if I were to animate this guy now in 2D and I render out a 2D image sequence that'll turn into a 2D video essentially, then you don't need the interactive license, because what you're creating is 2D pictures, and for that you just need the standard license. That's how it works. So even animations like this are covered with the standard license if you're interested in that. So that's the tail animated. That's kind of very cool. So I'm gonna go and, if I start that from here. So the tail wobbles, and that's awesome, but I can also add other morphs now to the tail. So I need to do all this on frame 0. So with the first part of the tail selected, if I head over to my parameters tab, and on the morph section, I've got something like bend aft and aft side side and all that. So this is how I can now add a bending motion to the tail on top of my jiggling motion. So I didn't do this before. If you do this before, then it'll be kind of wiped out by the effect that the spring dynamics calculates. So if you have any of these types of morphs, make them add them afterwards. So if I do this now and then play back the animation, then the tail still jiggles, but it doesn't quite fall to the ground anymore. So very nice, very nice. And it's all done with one script. It's very cool. I love this script. Let's make his nose, whiskers and ears jiggle just the same way. So this also works if you have, so the ears, for example, they're 2 nodes and they don't have anything following the node, I don't think. If I go and just click the ear, I can see left ear is this, and then I also have the right ear, which is that. And they're just the outside bits here. So I can do this manually, I believe, like this. So it would indeed jiggle, but I can select multiple pieces at a time. So I'm going to go and select the left ear and the right ear by holding down Control. So this is another way that you can animate things with Spring Dynamics. You just select multiple pieces that you want to animate, even though they're not connected directly. So select them both and double click the script again to start it up. Those eyes, right? Exactly. You're welcome. Absolutely. You're very welcome. And I'm going to go through some of the settings in a moment, but for now I'm just going to go and say apply effect. It goes and calculates. It takes it literally no time to do this. You say exit and then go watch the ears. The ears now wobble, and it's just so super subtle, but it is that kind of toony effect that would take hours to animate by hand, and it's not going to look as good as something like this would. So I find this absolutely amazing. Oh, the eye target. I think we can hide the eye target, can't we? Let me see if I can. Stop it and hide the eye target just so that we can eye target there. Bing. Ah, I see. Eye target. Boom, there. And then also let me go and switch that off so we don't see the manipulator. Yes, absolutely funky. I really like this little guy and just the amount of stuff you can do with it. And if we stick with the ears for a moment, I'll go and show you some of the settings. So whenever you change something on the script, it will remember what you did there. So I'll say the left ear and the right ear. I'm going to select both of them again. Double click to bring up the script again. And for 15 bucks, it's a really, really cool bargain. I think I bought it at full price because I really wanted to find out what it's all about. So the main things are here: the strength, that is the value that makes these things wobble more or less. Then there's the stiffness. I suppose that's the resistance that these things have. So it's kind of the way how they come back and how much they rebounce. And then the damping, I believe that is how much they bounce initially. So basically this here, I believe that is the damping. And then this here is the stiffness. And then the overall amplitude here, that's the strength. So if I go and crank that up to 100, then this usually, does it not do that? No, it doesn't do that. This here usually shows you what the values are that you're changing. Oh, there we go. It took a little bit of time for that to show. There we go. So it does calculate this in the background, I think, and then it just shows you the whole change that you're making. So make it smaller and wait a second and boom. So it kind of amends the curve. Yeah, that's kind of just a nice visual representation. So if I leave this on, say, 70 and I crank up the stiffness, and I'm probably overdoing it now, but you can see what happens. So the initial bounce is dampened that way, and then the damping itself, I think that is the thing that happens at the end. So if I crank that up, I think it'll just bounce more. No, it bounces less. I see. That's how it works. I'm only familiar with these terminologies from cloth engines. But yeah, when you make a change, it should go and show you the result as a graph. So if we go and exaggerate the whole movement, I'll put that to 100%, and I'll lower the stiffness to as little as I can, so 5%. So that should now make the ears wobble quite a lot. Let's see if it works. And let's see what it actually looks like. Probably a little bit too much. There we go. So yeah, they go really exaggerated. If you need your animation to be a certain length if the calculation goes into the end of the animation. So mine doesn't go beyond 80 frames. So if I wanted to have this ear jiggle really play out to the end, I need to go and increase the length of my animation. You can see the difference there. Very interesting. Let me go and do this with a different value. Play with the damping a bit. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. So we go and crank the damping up, maybe, or turn it down. Turn it down, actually. Make the damping really low. And yes, that should look crazy. Let's see what happens. I like how quickly it calculates, but if you have longer animations and a lot of bits and pieces that look at the ears, crazy. If you have a lot of bits and pieces that need to be calculated, then it can take quite a while. So if you make that animation longer now, then he won't walk anymore. But if I make this a total of 165 values now, and I go and let the Spring Dynamics calculate this again, all these frames will be filled in even though the guy isn't walking anymore. Come on. Don't know why it takes so long to load, but hey. There. So I'll go and use the same values. I'll just go apply the effect, and you can see how the script is filling out the keyframes at the back there. And so now these ears should just keep doing that, which is kind of crazy. So it's quite freaky the amount of effects you can do with this, and you just play around with the values and have a lot of fun. So that is of course not how you want your mouse ears to look, but you can make it happen. Crazy. So I think I'm gonna go and bring this back to 85. 85. And the poor guy, I think his ears, they really need fixing. So I'm gonna go and use the default values again because they work really well. I'm gonna go and add this to his nose as well. fix the ears first. Go reset, so if you ever have issues with the values, you've cranked them up too high or too low, you just hit the reset button and then just go apply the effect. Ears are now fixed, that's cool. And let's go and fix the nose as well. So this nose here, come on, where's your nose? I'm sure the nose has, there we go, nose. And the nose itself has left and right whisker, so we can use this follow option again. So all I need to do is click the nose and it will also make the whiskers wobble. And that's done with this little box that says follow. That's this one here. Include follow. If you disable that, then anything that is parented to the node that you've selected won't be included, I believe. So let's hit apply. Mr. Rel, top of the morning. How are you? We're just talking about spring dynamics. So now his ears wobble. Oh, his ears haven't been fixed. My goodness, we need to fix the ears. Pronto. Yeah, the ears are too strong. But you can see the nose now wobbles. The whiskers, I'm not sure if we can see that, but they do also wobble. They're only made of one piece. If they'd have more rigging in them, they would wobble even better. And we have the tail. That's kind of nice. Yeah, the ears haven't been fixed. I'm not sure what happened with the ears. I thought I'd selected the ears. Let's see if I can make that happen again. Left ear and right ear. Where's right ear? Right ear. Come on. Right ear. Right ear, left ear. There we go. Frame 0 of the animation. Hope we can fix it. What a difference a wobble makes, exactly. And it's just about subtlety as well. And you can use any node on any figure to do this. So it's not dependent on, there we go. That's, no, it still hasn't fixed it. Ah, one of those things. But they're easy again to apply. So that's quite nice. Yeah, I think I was giving too much damping there. Yes, and it's just so subtle and it just takes you hours to animate this by hand. What I find great about the script is that it doesn't rely on a particular figure to make this happen. It works on any node, so anything, even your own figures. If you just rig, I don't know, a cylinder with 3 pieces, it will work on that. And it works on custom figures like the mouse, it works on Genesis, it works on literally anything. Like things like antennas on cars. If you have a cartoon car that goes and drives around and comes to a halt, then the antenna could just do this. So that works. And of course you can use it on breasts as well if you want to do that, or on a big belly if you want to make that jiggle. That is all possible. Yeah, so that's Spring Dynamics. Brian's posted a link. I've pinned it in the chat. It's currently on sale. Perfect timing, in fact. So go grab it if you're into animation. It really makes a big difference to what you're doing animation wise. Haha. And this little guy is awesome. Yes, this guy is called the Toon Mouse by 3D Universe. Let me see if I can find that. See if he also is on sale. He's an older product, actually. Toon Mouse. He comes with a piece of cheese. There's a friendly mouse. Toon Mouse, there we go. Yes, he's also 50% off. How exciting. There we go. That's the Toon Mouse. He is just so cool. He's a custom figure, so he's not based on Genesis. He comes in this bundle as well, which is also some 50% off. That's quite nice. He comes with, so he's custom rigged. He has a few expressions. He doesn't have eye ray shaders, but yeah, he's got a piece of cheese. He also has a jacket if you want a jacket. He has this eye target that you can easily adjust eyes with, and he comes with a handful of poses that you can dial in and interpolate between with Puppeteer. Very, very cool. There we go. And now he wobbles. So, you know, while I have him, let me go and get rid of him. I want to know what he looks like when we animate him in the jogging mode. Let's do that. So if you do buy the mouse, and if you want to use the mouse, you don't find him in Smart Content, you find him in the content library. And you don't find him, do you find him in DAZ Studio Library? Yes. No, you're not. You find him under poser format. So I haven't found him in my DAZ Studio formats. It's a poser format. And in your library, it's under Figures, 3D Universe, Toon Mouse. That is where he's hiding. So let's go and grab him out again. Maybe put his jacket on. There we go. Now he has a jacket. That's nice. and I'll go and apply my other anti-block that I have here, and that's this one was the chilled walk that we just played with. Maybe we'll go cartwheel is a good one. I've mixed and matched them up. You can basically have the running and then do the cartwheel. So I'll go use the running, and this is also running. Oh yeah, this wasn't quite working. This is a zombie walk. Let's go running short. That's quite nice. And then we go and hopefully loop it 2 or 3 times. Does that work? Yes, that works. So that should have a lot more bounce in it. Let's go turn this into keyframes again. So it needs to be a keyframe animation. Bake to Stewie keyframes. Say yes. Then we don't need the anti-block anymore. And the last frame here is still 84. Is that right? No, the current is 78, so our current, the whole play range needs to be 79 then. Oh, actually 78 is probably just fine. Does it work? Now see, this is this extra frame that DAZ Studio needs. That's so 79. And now we have a smooth motion. I don't know why that extra frame is necessary, but you know, it is, so it's fine. I'll go and start with the tail again first. So the first segment of the tail. Let's see if we can do all of these things at once. So there's the tail, there's this ear and that ear, and there's the nose. So let's see. Right ear, nose, left ear, and whoops, right ear, left ear, nose, and tail. Animate them all. Do you know, I don't think so, Mick. It's in Install Manager, it'll tell you when there is an update, but I don't think, is there a way to see when it was last updated? I don't think there is. You can kind of, you can see by the item number when it was added to the store, but I haven't found a way to see when it was last updated. I don't think. It's a good question though. I haven't seen that. iTarget. Let's remove that. So okay, let's see what this guy does now when he jogs. Yes, there we go. Everything wobbles, and a lot too. And the tail, I mean, I suppose the tail is now, it kind of lends itself to that. Look at the nose! Add an eye blink anti-block and you have a running mouse. That's cool. And so the tail, right, the tail we can probably add this tail morph to it. Make it go like that. The other two, if you're interested, is this one, so it can curl left or right. That's rigged as well. And then there's also twist aft, which is basically the whole twisting motion of the tail. So you can add that as well. I think I'm just going to go and bend the tail up a little bit. And that motion still is retained there. Very cool. Don't step on it, little buddy. If I find something, I'll totally tell you. I'll totally let you know. Wonderful to see you, by the way. And thank you so much for all your Patreon, Discord integration tips and Twitch integration tips. I really appreciate that. I finally got it working that my Patreon and Ko-fi and Twitch and Discord servers are now all integrated, so that if somebody becomes a supporter on Patreon, they automatically get a role. I don't need to send an invite anymore. I can just go and you just press a button and you get a particular role on my Discord server. So that's nice. I had to add a few manually because that's not something that I was able to do in the beginning. So yeah, thanks to Weird Science X who let me know that. Haha. So that's Spring Dynamics. I hope you're having a lot of fun with it. If you're doing animations, it's such a cute tool. Alrighty, let's have a look at what Brian showed me. Oh, nice. Okay, excellent. Let's have a look at Blender next, and that's a funky little tip that I got from Brian, how to create a voxel effect. Let me show you what I mean by that. Voxels, they're very popular right now. I'll go and let's go to my Ko-fi page. I think I've posted it there. I think I've also posted it on Patreon and on my website. There we go, Pixel Crap, that's it. So this is what you can do. This is the other guy that I've used from 3D Universe. I've sent him over with the DAZ to Blender bridge and then applied this voxel effect. So technically it's not actually called a voxel effect in this case. It's just a remesh modifier that has a particular setting. But I thought that's quite cute, and Brian is in fact working on an animation right now, a fully fledged animation that will feature humanoid figures that look like this, who are kind of trapped in the Matrix. And it's a tie-in with his book, which is called, was it what? It wasn't What the Luck, it was the other one. It was, what was that called again, Brian? Oh, I can't remember. I've narrated it. I've spent months on it. What's it called again? It wasn't What the Luck. It was, what's the thing where the simulation hypothesis was tested? Oh, it's a great book. Great. Yeah, exactly. Little Lego, it looks like little Lego blocks. That's exactly right. Flicker World, of course. Brian, how could I have forgotten? Flicker World, you get that on Amazon. Brian's written it, I've narrated it, and it's about the possibility that people may have been trapped in the Matrix. So, haha, very, very interesting. Let's go and bring that, perhaps a little mouse character, into Blender and apply this effect to him. That would be exciting. Yes, there we go. Exactly. So yes, the voxel effect. We need an object to get started. Maybe I will just go and not quite use the cube, but let me just use, for demonstration purposes, let me just use a sphere. UV sphere is probably okay. Size also doesn't exactly matter. So what you do technically with any object, no matter if you bring it in from DAZ Studio or if you just use it in Blender, you head over to this little wrench icon here. That is the modifier properties. So with your object selected, add a modifier. And this one in particular is called the remesh modifier. So there are, sometimes you will find something, other bits and pieces in Blender that will allude to voxels, but this is not it actually. So you head over and add a remesh modifier. And its sole purpose is to change the geometry of the object. So usually that is used when you want to retopologize your object, but we basically bastardize the effect, and you can see that the geometry has changed a little bit. I'll bring that over so you can see what's going down in the zoomed in version. But Brian says, so this is currently set to voxel, but that's not actually the effect that we need. We need to set it to blocks. And when we do that, so these are the different ways that this modifier is going to be applied. Like smooth would do this, sharp would do this. And if you set it to blocks, it'll do this. And that's kind of cool. It has some settings here. So remove disconnected would mean that in the case of my crab, he had disconnected eyebrows. And if I wanted to have them participate in the remeshing, I'd have to remove this. So if I untick it, then everything that's disconnected from the kind of main geometry will also be morphed like this. The octree depth is the amount of blocking that's applied. So if you were to, whoops, I'm just trying to show you a nicer angle here. If you were to increase that, then you get a smoother amount of blocks here. And so it looks like, you can more make out the shape of the original object underneath it. And it takes Blender also quite a while to calculate this as you get into the higher depths. And the lower you make it, the more abstract the model becomes. So it's kind of cool. And it works with any object, no matter how simple or how complicated. Quite interesting. And then when you're ready, you could just go and apply the modifier. I believe there's a little menu for that here. Apply. There we go. And when you do that, the geometry is baked in. So if I do that, I don't have settings anymore. And this is now fully fledged geometry that I can go and mess with. So that's how that works in principle. Let's go and bring in something, maybe the mouse character, and turn him into a blocky type character. Take this out. I might use the bridge for that. I've only just upgraded to Blender 2.93 yesterday, so No promises, this might not actually work. I'll just use the mouse and nothing but the mouse. Let's see if it works. The DAZ to Blender bridge, interestingly, isn't hiding under file send to, like two bridges are. It's also not under edit, what was the other thing, where you send it to Unreal Engine, that's under the edit menu usually. No, this one's under script, bridges, Blender, DAZ to Blender. Don't ask me why. See if it works. Oh, that I'm not sure. Does that look good? That reminds me of yesterday's stream. Ay, caramba, what happened here? Ah. May have found a little bug with the DAZ to Blender bridge. But yes, let's just see if it arrives. Reminds me of that scene from Star Wars. Oh, that's soft wrap, that's not it. DAZ to Blender. Import a new environment prop. Let's see if it works. Oh, it hasn't worked. Ay, caramba. Yeah, it totally hasn't worked. So, another piece of artwork, you think? What has happened to my little guy? Okay, thanks, DAZ to Blender bridge. Let's just do it manually, shall we? Let's get rid of this. Also, load a fresh copy of my guy in. Bye, Jen. No, I haven't. That sounds exciting. Drop a link in the Discord server if you could. That'd be good. I'm always on the lookout for new and exciting add-ons. This kind of leads us into the next thing I wanted to discuss with you, and that's how to exchange morphs between Blender and DAZ Studio. So I'll go and I'll do that in the next. I'll do that in the next tip. So for now, let's go and hide the eye target. We can give this guy a little pose if we wanted to do that. I think that is then under poses. 3D universe, toon, animals, toon. No, that's the crab. Mouse. There we go. Let's give him a sneaky pose. This is all poser format stuff. Yeah, that looks nice. That's also nice. A little cheapish. Oh yeah, there we go. This is nice. Let's have him jump. And be afraid of something. Or let's have him do this. That's also, hey, I'm the mouse, it's good. Or that's also very cute. Let's use this. This is a nice pose. We'll use that. So in order to bring this guy into Blender, make sure only the object is selected that you want to bring into Blender. And then head over to File, Export. Pick a new folder of your choice. I'll use something like Toon Mouse. Just in case this becomes larger, I'll go and put this into a folder called OBJs. You don't have to do that. I'm just pernickety now. I want to get organized, you know, with my files. And I'll say Toon Mouse Posed. I'll give it a file name. I'll use Wavefront OBJ at the bottom, very important. And then scary window comes up that asks us for a lot of options. So you are forgiven to think that you could just pick the Blender preset from here, but of course that is broken and it has been for a while, so don't use that. In fact, use the DAZ Studio export setting and then drop down your scale from 100 to 1%. You can even create yourself a new object or a new preset with that, but the difference between the way Blender and DAZ Studio perceive OBJs is a factor of 100. So you need to export at a scale of 1%, and then it comes in okay in Blender. And then from Blender, you need to export at 100 times 100 to get out and bring it back into DAZ Studio so that the conversion process works. So I'm going to use 1%, hit accept, and then go and bring my little guy into Blender. So that's under File, Import, Wavefront OBJ. And now, where might that be? Blender, Toon Mouse, OBJs, that's him, OBJ and MTL file are here. Everything's all right. It's split by object. I don't want to do that. Polygroups you don't need in our case. I hit import. Blender thinks about it for a second, and here he is, the toon mouse at the correct scale. That's quite nice. So the bridge, if you use the bridge, then it'll translate materials for you, or it's trying to do that, so that's quite nice. But of course it doesn't work with every object like this little guy has shown. Click off it, click on the object again so that it is properly selected. Let's go and add that modifier to it now. Remesh. Oh, there we go. Poor little guy, barely recognizable. But that's because we've not set it up correctly. So put it to blocks, and I'm going to disable remove disconnected. And that already makes a big difference. So it looks like everything that would have been seen as disconnected, like his whiskers and stuff like that, that just doesn't show up here. So I'll go and disable that, and then I'll crank up the octree depth, and lo and behold, more and more toon mouse comes into vision. That is just such a cool effect. And I'm thinking an animation like that, that's just very, very cool. Nice idea, Brian. You can see the whiskers just about popping into place here. Oops. Very nice. Very, very cool. Let's frame him up and make a quick render out of him. So 0 on the numpad changes to my camera. N opens this little tool shelf here on the side. And I like to go to view and then go and lock the camera to view. Oops, I'm totally zoomed in on a terrible. Let me go do this again. Sorry about this. So we were here looking at this guy. Let's set up a quick render for this guy. So we go press N to bring up that tool shelf here. Head over to view. Then we press 0 on the numpad to see our camera and zoom in there a bit like this. So this is basically the aspect frame in Blender. We go and tick this thing here, which is camera to view, and then this gets this little dotted red line on it. So that means when I move my viewport now, the camera will follow. It's one of the things that has greatly confused me about Blender when I started working with it. How do you set up the camera? So one of those things. The full stop on the numpad zooms in on the object. And perhaps we want to look at him like this. So let's say that's framed up now. I can go and untick this camera to view and see what I can do about lighting. So now this snaps out again. I think we do have one light source in our view. That's quite nice. So G Shift Z to move that in the same plane. I'll give him this from the give him this from the front, maybe. Dude. Difficult to see where that is sometimes. So let's say this is the light from the front. It's a point light. Look through the camera, have a look at the rendered view. That's this icon at the top here. Takes a moment to change over. Should also change check my render setting. My render, what's it called? My render engine. What are we actually using? We're using Eevee. Okay, that's not bad. Good to know. I didn't quite know that. That's a bit too far away. Illuminate him from the front. It's a point light, so we might be better off with an area light that we go and rotate. He's small, so it's kind of difficult to get this right. That should give him some light from the front. No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it? Totally doesn't work. Move it here and further down. Doesn't this work? Shouldn't this work? No, it doesn't. Ah! Come on, some basic lighting, Blender. Give us some basic lighting. I don't know why this looks so bad. I can't quite tell that. Don't know. Does it matter if we make it a bit brighter. No, it's just completely screwed up. I don't know what's going on. It does happen sometimes. Put you further up here. Shouldn't what's in the way? I wonder if the camera is in the way of the light. Is that possible? Could that be? Will this look better now? Huh. I don't know where these shadows come from. That's crazy. I have no idea. It's the scale of the shadow approximation, do you think? Oh, okay. Because I think the intensity was actually okay. Where do I do that, Emerga? I have no idea. Scale of the shadow approximation. Is it in shadows here? Is that it? Over here. Clip style, right. Clip, that could be. That could be. And you all use cycles. Actually, that's probably the best idea, actually. Yeah, let's not use Eevee. Let's use cycles. Thanks. Good idea. And all of a sudden we see light that we think might behave better. Yeah, thanks. That's a very good idea. Yes, thanks. I'd love to learn something else. So Eevee is still a bit of a mystery to me. And this light behaves more like what I was expecting. And let's put this to GPU. Let it do its kernel calculation. That's one of those intricacies about Blender. When you're using cycles, it has to go and calculate its... So whenever you have a new scene, it needs to compile the render kernels once. And if you keep using that scene, that's fine. But if you then go to another scene, it still has to do that again. So this is this thing here at the top, loading render kernels. It's actually compiling the render kernels. It's just how it works. And when you use GPU rendering, it just has to do this for every new scene. I don't really know why, but that's just how it works. Blender has great other advantages though. So for example, there's been a patch in Blender 2.8 that will let you render scenes that don't fit into your GPU's VRAM still with the GPU. It does this by swapping textures in and out as it needs them, and it works marvelously well. So I've rendered scenes in Blender that did not fit into the VRAM, and like for animations this is perfect. So you take a small hit on the render time, but it works. So this is something that Iray can't do, and I think it's the way the whole the engine is coded, I believe. So this was a patch that a community member actually submitted to Blender, and it's awesome. It's in there. It doesn't work with multiple GPUs, but works with single GPUs. It's quite groovy. Yeah, same here, Mick. I've seen great results. So one of the things, and again, this is from the Emerga. There's a couple of things. Once it's calculated the kernels, I'll show you where that is. He's told me two things that I thought were absolutely amazing. One is to enable the ambient occlusion, and then the other one is screen space reflection. So you want to probably enable that. And the third thing is that you can use a light probe to kind of pre-calculate the shadows. So that was also great tips from the Emerga. Very much appreciate that. I mean, they both have, it's a bit like Filament and Iray, isn't it? They both have advantages. I don't know if Blender's actually crashed here, or is this, are you still working on the render kernels here? We can't always try this again, you know. I have a feeling Blender's probably crashed here. I might just go back to version 2.92 at this rate. It usually doesn't take this long. Crazy. Yes, it is. I feel they both have advantages, and I like the idea of the real-time look and feel to it. Oh, come on. Okay, that's it. I've lost my patience now. Don't save. Use different Blender. Always good to have multiple versions of Blender that you can launch side by side. Hey Marcelo, how you doing? Good to see you. We're just battling our way through some Blender settings. I foolishly tried to use the DAZ to Blender bridge. Monster came out. Let's not do that. Oh, I can show you the pixel crab. This is something I have prepared earlier. Look at that. Yes, Blender 2.92 remembers it. and that has good lighting on it. So I did manage to to make that happen at one point. Yeah, pixel crab. And what did I do here? I put, just for my understanding, how did I set up the lighting here? Oh yeah, just two lights, one from here, one from the back. And the one from the back probably doesn't even make that much of a difference. See what happens if I go and switch the cycles and GPU compute. Switch that over to rendering. So this scene I had already rendered, so Blender has already calculated the render kernels for that. But yeah, this is what it looks like rendered. Viewport, I can make that. Can we have viewport adaptive sampling? That's a good idea. And viewport denoising, enable that. Haha, nicely done. And this guy, does he have the? Yes, he still has the modifier on it, so I can make him more pixelated and let Blender rip through that in the viewport. The new Cycles X, unbelievable, very, very cool. I'm very impressed with the render speed it brings to the party. So it doesn't take all that long to show me something. I'm not entirely sure about the viewport rendering here, so the viewport denoising, I'm gonna switch that off again. And maybe crank that up. If you put that to 0, by the way, the viewport denoising, hope you can see that here. This is the sampling for the render and for the viewport. And the viewport would stop at whatever this value is set to. I think the default is 32, I believe. But if you set this to 0, then Blender will just keep calculating and you can see what the best result is for your render. That's up here at the top left. So path tracing sample, it just keeps going up and up and up because I've set the render amount to 0. If I set that to a specific number like 12, it will go and well, I have to go and move it first. It will go and calculate exactly 12 iterations and then stop, and then you see that this remains grainy. So if I go and put this to 64, it just goes and calculates 64 and then stops. So that gives you your GPU a bit of a rest at that point. That's what that's for. But if you set this to 0, it would just keep calculating forever and keep bouncing rays out, and you can kind of keep an eye on what your render looks like at that point. And then if you feel, well, 500 is good enough for me, you can just go and set the final render iterations to 500. It's kind of a nice little tip from Andrew Price, the Blender guru. He knows it all. Very, very cool. So there we go. That's in essence how you apply the little block modifier. And it's yeah, thank you, Brian, for this tip. It's very nice. I'm looking forward to your animation. Octree depth will determine how blocky your guy looks, and it's just so many funny little iterations that you can build. It's just a nice little effect. I love it when you can use something and then just go and play with it. The downside to this is that you lose all the textures that you once had because the object is remeshed. So the textures that I once had on this object are no longer there, and I currently don't know a way around it. If this was ZBrush, we could use something like their pixels, in which you can bake a map to an outside pixel of the shape, then change the resolution, and that would basically, as far as resolution is concerned, it will retain the color value on the outside point, and you could bake new maps from that at a different resolution. So that's how ZBrush handles that. Very, very cool. But while we're in Blender, and let's just stick with Blender 2.92, I'm fine with that. I'll go and create myself a new scene. Let me show you how, so this is another question that I've had, how you can bring in, how you can make morphs with Blender, or more specifically, how you can bring them back into DAZ Studio. So the application is, you have a character, you have a piece of clothing, and you export that, hello crab, and you export that into Blender, and then you make a change to the object, and then we want to bring this back as a morph into DAZ Studio. And many people have problems with that because there's so many settings. I thought I'd run you through it. This was, do I remember who asked this? No, I'm so sorry, I do not remember who asked this, but I've had this little discussion with somebody on a YouTube comment thread, and he said, you know, every time I bring in my morph back into DAZ Studio, my mesh seems to explode, and it really, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything, nothing seems to work. I don't know what else to do. And I'm familiar with the phenomenon. Let me go and use a gray Genesis 8 male character for that. So imagine you want to make a morph on him. And let me show you exactly the steps that are necessary to make this happen without issues. So the first thing, if I'm using the dev rig character, all I need to do is change this guy into low resolution. That's under the parameters tab with my figure selected under mesh resolution up here. And you just change this from high to base resolution. That's important. Don't export the high resolution even if you're making a morph. The reason for that is that you can't bring it back at high resolution. It needs to be base resolution because the high resolution here is implied by a modifier, so it's not actually baked into the figure. So DAZ Studio, when it imports the morph, will give you a geometry mismatch error. So that's often the case when you export this at a high resolution and then bring it back and try to create a morph from that. It just comes up with an error, and the reason for that is you need to export it at base resolution, make your morph at base resolution, and then bring that base resolution back. The second most common issue that people come across is that they've followed that, they use base resolution, but the geometry still doesn't match. And they said, hey, I haven't changed anything in my editor. And I totally appreciate that. You probably haven't. But what may happen is that the dev rig figure doesn't have that, but your other figures will have items like the eyelashes or the tear duct on here. So when you export those, make sure you make them invisible. So just click the eyeball icon in the Scene tab. You don't have to delete these items, you just make them invisible and then you export them. So that's important to remember. Switch those things off so that you only have one single object. Otherwise, if you had eyelashes, DAZ Studio will merge them together and you then create your morph. When you bring it back, you have a geometry mismatch error because it's two objects rather than one that you have exported. So make sure you've disabled all these things. So at base resolution, let's go over to File, Export. And shall I use Toon Mouse for that? I'm going to use Toon Mouse for that. That's cool. I'm going to put it in here and call that Genesis 8 Male. That's all. Base, maybe, whatever. That's cool. Save it. And just like before, you want to probably use the DAZ Studio preset and set the scale to 1%. That's all you need to do, really. Everything else you can leave as is, hit accept and export your figure. And Blender should be able to understand that. Let's go and remove the cube and bring in that figure that I've just made. So that is under Blender. Toon Mouse, conversely, OBJs, and then there's the Genesis Male base. And just like before, I'm going to go and disable split by object and import him. Takes a second, and here he is. Awesome. Click off him, click on him again, and then that's the figure selected. We can just for the sake of checking, is this the right size in Blender? Now, if you hit N and the properties come up here, I think under View you can see. Where do you see that? Is it under item? Actually, it's under item. There we go. You can see in the dimensions that the Y, which is the up and down axis in Blender, is 1.81 m, and that is kind of the size of a regular human figure. Chris, absolutely. Did I not show that? That is a vital point. Chris, you're the man. Let's just while we're here, you're so right. Did I not talk about this? Yes, very important. This is something Chris mentioned, something very, very important, that when you export, make sure this little guy is selected here. Where is it? Where is it? Didn't I just see that? Where are you, buddy? Ignore invisible nodes. Yeah, so mine was enabled already. So I think when you use the DAZ Studio preset, it comes in automatically. And this is kind of vital to understand. If you untick this, then everything that's hidden in your scene will be merged into the OBJ that you're exporting. So make sure you don't do that. Make sure this is enabled. Like Chris suggests, ignore invisible nodes. So when you now have eyelashes that you made invisible in your scene, now they are not exported. But with this thing disabled, they would be exported. Do you know what I mean? So one of those things. Thank you, Chris. Yes, very good point. Music stopped. Put it back on. There. So in our case, luckily we don't have that issue, but yes, very important to remember. So now with my figure in here, I'm sure it has the correct size. Let's create a morph, some dummy morph. So I'll go into edit mode, click A to deselect everything, and just use something like proportional editing and maybe a face selection, something like that. And I'll just go and just move that out. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. That's my morph. Awesome. Woo! Great. I'm an artist now. This is now Wonk Morph HD. $30 please. Yes, so that's my morph. That's my morph. I've made a change to the character. Obviously you would do a much better job than I ever will. So let's go and with the figure selected, head over to File, Export, Wavefront OBJ once again. For Chloe, Sydney, it's kind of different. You don't have to. For Chloe, you can use the high res to export and drape your garment to that, because it'll probably match the resolution in DAZ Studio better. So in Chloe and Marvelous Designer, it doesn't matter because we're not bringing the mesh for the avatar back into DAZ Studio. Good question. So yeah, you can use high resolution for Chloe. But it's kind of up to you. So if you like Chris suggests, if you use base resolution, you have a smaller file, and you can basically use the subdivision smoothing modifier in Chloe when you bring in the base resolution. That kind of looks nice as well. We might cover that next time actually. Good question. So if you were to export the low resolution to Marvelous Designer or Chloe, you can smooth the faces of the avatar, and that has the same effect as using the subdivision surface modifier in DAZ Studio. Very good question. Toon Mouse, and I'll go and put this also into this same folder here, and I'll call that G8 Morphed. I'm going to call it Amazing Morph. Amazing Morph. There we go. Hey, caramba. Morph. There we go. So in here, I can use this scale at 1. I don't know. This is kind of depends on how you want to do it. If you do this, you have to now change the scale on import in DAZ Studio. Let's leave that. Let's do that. So let's keep the scale on 1. But what I find important is under geometry, you should enable keep vertex order. So this is something I found is important when I bring my morph back. So that's all we need to do here. Scale, set the scale to 1. That's the default, and keep the vertex order. Also up here, a bit like what we had with DAZ Studio, selection only will make sure that your OBJ only consists of what you've currently got selected. So in my case, it's the Genesis figure. If you had other bits and pieces in your scene, disabling that would merge them all together, and in DAZ Studio you'd get that geometry mismatch error again. So make sure it's selection only, figure selected, then hit export. And let's do this thing. Wonk Morph. Awesome. So then you're welcome, absolutely, no problem. So in DAZ Studio, let's go and bring in that change that I've made in Blender as a morph. So that happens under Edit, Object, Morph Loader Pro. That's where that happens. And this is now where we have a plethora of import options, and those two things combined, that's kind of the key to success. Morph Loader Pro, choose the file, like in our case, Amazing Morph. I like it. And in here we now have further options that we can set. So on one hand, I had expected for us to have a scale section, which we don't. I thought that was here. Was that not here? Am I making that up? Can I not change the scale on import? We'll come to that in a moment. So I think the biggie here is this here, primary figure from graphed or primary figure vertex order, and that'll determine if your figure now explodes or not. I think I may have made a mistake on export. I think I didn't change the scale in Blender, but we'll see what happens. So one of these is the success option, and the other one is the devastating it doesn't work option. I think it's vertex only. If I set this to vertex only, I think morph was created successfully, so that's good. I think this is going to go horribly wrong now, but let's figure it out. Nope. Kind of, yeah, so scale is terrible, but other than that, the figure itself works just fine. So let me do this again in a moment. Right, yeah, so the scale at the output needs to now be increased by a factor of 100. I did not set that. So let's do that first. Actually, let's export this guy again. So when I exported it from DAZ Studio, I divided by 100, and now here on the output I need to multiply by 100. So that's here on scale. So that needs to be set to 100. Selection only obj, that's cool. I'll say amazing morph 1. Export that. And now with edit object morph loader pro, choose morph. That's now amazing morph, I suppose 1. Let's use vertex order again and hit accept. And see if that works. It does. Look at that. So that works fine. So that has worked. I like it. Also works in the negative. This is a great morph. Yeah, I should sell that. But what sometimes, so when people have this explosion issue, then it's usually the way this option is set here. Let me try. I'm trying to find a way for this to explode now. So if this is not set to one of these, set it to the other. So I've had success with either of them, but non-success with the other. So I don't know why. I'm going to set this to from graph now. Hit accept. Loading morph. Did that work? I can't tell. I'm not sure if it worked. And I've had issues with this slider now causing this explosion, but it only works sometimes. So if you follow these instructions, it should work. So export with vertex order and then import with this other option that I just had. I don't know why this doesn't work anymore. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Might have something to do with the export from Blender. When this little box isn't ticked here under geometry, this keep vertex order, if that's disabled and you import it with the wrong setting in DAZ Studio, that sometimes has an issue. One other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is when you don't use a base figure in Genesis, if you don't use a base figure in here, let's go through this whole process again with another morphed figure. So I'll go and use the same guy again, but I'm going to give him a full body morph on which you can make a change. So imagine we have something like, that's under actor, isn't it? Actor, full body, real world. Let's say bodybuilder and body tone. I'll give him that body tone, doesn't matter. Body size. Yeah, that's perfect. So we're gonna bring over an already morphed figure. So that's also sometimes what confuses people. There is a way to do this. You don't have to use a base figure if you want to make a change. Sometimes you want to make a change to a custom character. So I'll go and export that. Oh, is it that? Right, the keep vertex order. If you don't check that, that causes the explosion. Great. Great. Maybe we can demonstrate that in a minute. So let's export this guy and put him in here and call him G8 custom. Export. So in here, once again, I'm starting from the DAZ Studio preset and I'm going to divide by 100. So I'm going to set the scale to 1. And then everything else can stay the same, including ignore invisible nodes. Make sure you've switched off the eyelashes and tear ducts and all these things. And of course, something vital that I've forgotten is the mesh resolution. Haha. So instead of high resolution, make sure it's base resolution. Very important. Then we go and export this guy, G8 custom, and use exactly these settings. DAZ Studio preset at scale of 1%. Hit accept. That's that. In the Blender, import our guy. And this was G8 custom. Y up. Geometry here will go and not split anything. That's quite nice. Keep vertex order. That's in the polygroups. We don't need polygroups for this, but then. Sanj, thank you so much for subscribing. I appreciate that. Here's a man. Let's make a dummy morph on him. Just like before. That's my morph. I like it. To export him out again, file export wavefront obj. Give it a name. I'll call it custom morph. And this is what Chris is suggesting. Keep vertex order. That needs to be enabled. Otherwise, so by default, when you do that, it is disabled, and that causes the explosions. So thanks, Chris, for confirming that. I had a feeling it had something to do with that, but so enable that for sure, absolutely important. And then the scale, crank that up to 100. So that comes in at 1. Make sure that's set to 100 so that we multiply the scale on the output of Blender. Hit export. And then back in DAZ Studio, we'll bring this morph in now. But so here's another thing that people encounter with custom morphs that they export and then bring in again. So there's a little tick box here that when you go and open that custom morph, there's this little tick box down here. When you open this dialog up, it's called reverse deformations. So that's set to no by default. And what this means is that it kind of refers to the base figure. So if you're bringing in custom characters, you have to double click into this thing here and set this to yes. So I don't actually know why that doesn't work. Pose, I think, is it pose? Reverse deformations, is that, oh yeah, right click and then set it to yes, right. So it's not a difficult tiny little drop down menu, right click on it. No is the default. No means if you're bringing in a base figure, it needs to be set to no, but it needs to be set to yes if you're bringing in a custom morphed figure. So if I leave this on no and I create my morph and I go and crank it up, we'll see that usually there's issues with that. You can probably see it in the legs. The legs are behaving differently than I would have expected it. And that's because I didn't set this correctly. So you need to set this to yes if you're bringing in a custom morph like we did. So let me go and set this back to 0 and see if we can bring in a different morph and see the differences. So under Object, Morph Loader Pro, bring in the same morph here. Custom morph, and now I'll set my deformations to reverse deformations to yes. Hit that. It tells me, hey, this morph already exists. What we're going to do, reverse def on, I'll call it, just so that we can see the difference. Then now we have two morphs, and this one behaves just, you can see on the legs here, this behaves just like what I had set up in Blender, whereas the previous one that didn't have that will deform the legs to a certain extent. Usually on real characters, on real morphs, you see this much more pronounced, but yeah, that's the difference. If you have a character that has a custom morph on it, make sure you enable reverse deformations when you bring in the character back. And also super important, vertex order, keep the vertex order. Yes, exactly, Chris. Also, if you're using posed characters that you want to make a change to in Blender, also very important. So anything that means you have dialed up a morph or a pose, bring that out, make a change, bring it back in, make sure reverse deformations is set to on. If you use a base Genesis figure in its base position with nothing else, make sure it's set to off. And basically that's, you know, that's the secret to success, I think. Oh, you can do that, Brian. I didn't know you could when you imported keep vertex order. I didn't know that. I didn't, and it seems to have worked. So interesting. With clothing, Mick, yes, it's exactly the same process. If you bring in an item of clothing into Blender, you would follow exactly the same process and then create a morph with that. So that's, again, this is kind of cool. Shall we try that? Let's try that. Let's give him a jacket and morph him and shape him a little bit and adjust a piece of clothing. Let's do that. I think that's a really good idea that ties in with this. Let's try that. Let's use maybe a female character and give her a pose and a body shape and adjust the piece of clothing outside in somewhere else like Blender. So this process is a little simpler if you have something like ZBrush. So ZBrush offers this literally like a one-click solution from DAZ Studio into ZBrush. Then you make your change and then you have the same one click that brings things back into DAZ Studio. It's a wonderful process. I think maybe we'll go through that next time. That might be good. Let's use anything really, any old dress. This one here maybe, is that cool? Just the dress. It's a deforced dress. I won't worry about the deforcedness of it. Hello, dress. There we go. Put some materials on it, like this. Perfect. And we'll give our lady both a body shape as well as pose. Let's do that. Yeah, she's under full body morphs are under actor. Full body something. Make her slim. That's an idea. Make her a bit. Make her old. Anyway, we'll make her like Monique. That's a good idea. Yeah, okay. Let's make her Monique, 100% Monique on the full body, and we'll give her a pose too. Maybe something. Maybe on the Z striker pose. Where are all my thumbnails, dude? Give me my thumbnails, man. What a shame. All I see is high heels mirror. Okay, let's use a different pose set. What a shame. Anything in here? No, that's foot poses. Okay, poses by function. Standing poses. Anything. Adventure poses. There we go. That's cool. Let's say this. Okay, perfect. This is actually this is nice. I think we can use this. And then we'll go and try to, let's say we try to make sure this arm doesn't dig in so much. Let's try that. And this arm is kind of, you know, we'll try to morph those things. See if we can make that happen. Or something more extreme. Yeah, let's use this. Let's use this. And we want to make sure that this arm, let's just change the arms a little bit on this item of clothing. I think that's a good idea. So the way I would do that is first I would switch off the item of clothing and just bring out my character in this posed morphed shape. This is how I would do it. And then I would go and deselect her and then export my item of clothing. So it's, you know, a little bit laborious, but it can be done. So let's do that. Let's go do the avatar first. Let's go and change this to low resolution first. I mean, I don't have to do this. I have this little tool from 3D Universe here that's on my toolbar. That's called the Scene Tools Set 1. That might also be on sale, Brian. If you go and dig that link out, that's kind of cool. If you click that button, it switches all objects in your scene to low resolution, including the character and the dress. So I can probably use, I can just use that. That's kind of cool. So on my Genesis figure, under general mesh resolution, it's now set to base. That's cool. And then the flower power dress is also set to base. So I just press one button and that just does, you know, low res, high res. Very good. Thank you, Brian. It's one of my all-time favorite tools. I'm going to go and replace this as the pinned message. It's just so useful. So disable the dress and grab out woman here and export her. I'm gonna stick with Toon Mouse. I don't really know why. This is completely messed up, but that's okay. I'll say G8 morphed, G8F morphed, in fact, so that I remember. Settings, DAZ Studio will have remembered, so I can just go and hit accept. So 1 on the scale, and that's it. Ignore invisible nodes, very important. That's my avatar. And then I'll go and make her invisible and make the dress visible now. And with the dress selected, I'll do the same thing. Export dress. Just call it dress, that's fine. Same thing, accept. And that's that. You can go away, thank you for your help. And we'll go and bring in my avatar first. She's now over here, G8 morphed. Geometry, I don't like to split things by object. So this is just the oh, what happened there? Ah, what is this? I don't know what she has around her. Something's gone wrong here. Is she wearing something? That is kind of bizarre. I don't know what that is. 50% off. Oh, right. Okay. The dress has a trim. Oh, really? That is kind of bizarre. Should that have been... what I should have done is on export, I should have probably hit Control and the eyeball icon to make these things invisible. So let me do that again. So by doing Control rather than non-control, you make everything that's underneath this this figure that's parented underneath this figure also invisible. So my dress was parented. I say I don't really want that, so let me go and unparent that. Right, so let me do this again. This is actually kind of nice that this has happened. So I'll go and control click the flower power dress to make sure everything that the dress has is disabled now. So anything that's underneath that dress object, very important. And I'll go and export my Genesis 8 figure out again. And now I'll go and control click that eyeball icon, control click the dress. With the dress selected, I'm going to go and export that dress again. So the cool thing about this ZBrush and also with the hexagon integration is that this doesn't happen. You don't have to worry about it. It just works. It's really nice because if your figure is deformed or not, the plugin will work that out, and it's literally a one-click solution. In ZBrush, you have the dresses or the portions of the avatar that are parented to it as subtools, and you can just go and play around with that. It's much easier than doing this manually. I'm kind of hoping that eventually, at one point, the Blender bridge will get there. There we go. That's much better. Well spotted, Marcelo, for the dress thing. Very well spotted. Let's go import the dress. Dress OBJ. Here it is. Looks exactly like it did in DAZ Studio. So with our morph, we're not actually going to touch the figure. We're just interested in the dress here. So I'll go and try to amend the arms a little bit. So make this just waft out a bit to to the right, and make sure these guys don't intersect. And maybe if I can work it out, I might just make the dress a bit longer. I'm just going to worry about the arms here. It's just a demo. So with the dress selected, tab will get us into edit mode. And with proportional editing selected, I should be able to pick something-ish that might be a bit too proportional. Yes, that's a bit whoops. That editing is a bit too. How do I do this again? To get the proportional editing less of an influence zone. How does that work again? Usually I click something. Oh, there we go. Is it shift? Yeah, there we go. It's shift. You have to select it, then hit shift and make the zone of influence a bit smaller. Oh, this is messy, isn't it? Geometries intersecting. I don't really know how to do this, because I'm not that good at Blender. But technically, I need to. Let me go and hide the avatar. That maybe that way I can at least select these internal polygons here. Scroll the mouse wheel, exactly, and so scroll it, but also you have to select something, then you have to hit an action like G, for example, and then you can just scroll. Right? That's how we do that. Perfect. So is intersecting geometry. How am I going to get this out? How am I even going to select that? Let's say all of this, and then there's an operation to kind of grow this selection from here, isn't there? Is it just the plus icon? That'd be too easy, wouldn't it? Select row. I'm sure there's a way for this, like grow the selection. Was that just something you press F3 for? Grow selection? Or is it add to selection? I have no idea how to do this in Blender. Maybe I'll just go and do a circle select here. Or you can sculpt it. I also don't know how to sculpt in Blender. I have no idea either. These things really stick together. It's really difficult to do. I have no idea how to do this. To connect it, okay, connect it only. Thank you, Chris. Ah, oh, Mr. Chris, awesome stuff. The awesome sauce. Chris, give yourself a shout out. Chris streams really good development sessions on Twitch. I thoroughly enjoy them. He uses Blender, he uses Marvelous Designer, he uses DAZ Studio, and he makes his own clothing items. So he knows so much more about how to do this properly than I do. So I have really no idea how to do this. I'm just futzing around, and I'm, you know, modeling in Blender is not something I just don't get many of these tools you have. I find it fascinating, but I have literally no knowledge of how to do this properly. So this is a really wonky little morph I've made here, but it's, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine for the demo. All we want to know is how does this end up back in DAZ Studio as a morph, I guess. Thank you, Chris. Grows Control Plus. Let me try that. Nope, Control Plus on my machine only makes things that just zooms in and out, so it doesn't work for me. But that's okay. That's totally fine. This is our morph. Awesome. We fixed everything. We're the master tailors, which is great. I'll go and make sure just the dress is selected so that I can bring this out again. Hit File, Export, Wavefront OBJ. And I'll call this one Dress Fixed, because, you know, we've totally fixed it. Just checking on the geometry, we have keep vertex order and the scale is 100. And now we go and export this. And this should now let us import this as a morph into DAZ Studio again. Let's see if we're successful. File, no, Edit, Object, Morph Loader Pro. Pick the morph in question, which is Dress Fixed. So now we need to go and make sure the reverse deformations are set to on, I believe, because we have posed the dress. So had it been in the A pose, I don't think we needed to do that, but had the dress been added to a custom morphed avatar, we would have had to add it. So only when it's the base avatar in the base shape, you wouldn't have to do this. But if the avatar was morphed or if a pose was applied, you need to set this to yes. And I think then that's it, right? Boom. Oh, geometry did not match. Zzz, zzz, zzz. Super uncool. Yeah, there's some... That's interesting. Why did that happen? Error face count. That's uncool. Don't know what to do now, because we didn't really... Did we screw it up that much in Blender? Shouldn't have happened. Yet it does, time and time again. Suggestions? What have we screwed up so badly in Blender that objects were missing? I didn't really delete anything. It's the trim again. But don't I... What happened to the trim then? Because I can see it here, so this is, I think, the trim. Do we have two objects? We've got, these are the materials here. I mean, I trust that this trim, by the way, clothing creators use this so that deforce doesn't ruin the whole garment. So it's a good tip by Marda. She said that if you have a deforce object in DAZ Studio and you don't, and you basically put deforce on the whole object, like the whole sleeve, then this thing is basically just going to melt and there's no structure in it anymore at all. So she suggested that you put something like this little trim here on the outside and make that basically like a separate object. And I mean, I can see it's kind of here, but I don't know how I've added / removed it in the import-export process. So that's a bit of a puzzle that I have here. Is this it? Is this the trim? No. I can't quite see the trim in DAZ Studio. I can see it in Blender. Not sure if I can select it. That's the right hand here. That's Genesis. That's not even the right object. Yeah, no idea, I'm afraid. Flower power dress add-on. Is this something that we should be worried about? No. I don't know. That's just, I think that's a default node, is it? No idea. So in an ideal world it should have worked, yet it does not. Sorry about that, folks. Wrong clothing object. So I'm sure that if you use the ZBrush plugin, it probably works. But I don't know what I've done here. Let's go and just remove it and just use a different outfit. If the outfit is too complicated, let's try it again with a different one. We're not that easily defeated, are we? No, we're not. These are all deforce dresses. Maybe I'll find something that's not a deforce outfit. Maybe just a skirt. Is that cool? Short skirt. There we go. That's nice. Let's use that. Also, just in case it's a bit too bright to see, let's go and add that filament draw options node. Make it 8000. There, it's not quite so blown out. Goody. So the skirt. Let's try it again with the skirt, just to get the basic workflow going. The skirt is parented. I don't really want that. I'm going to go and drag that out. Now it's its own object. I'll go and control, oh man, I'm zoomed in, aren't I? I'm going to control click the figure again to make her invisible. And now we have the bunny skirt. So with that selected, let me try that again. So export the skirt. exported with everything else. The dress, that didn't work out so well, so goodbye dress. Genesis, import my skirt. Skirt is there. Hopefully skirt doesn't have issues. See if I can put a morph into the skirt. Let's see if I can. Isn't there like a, is it alt click to say, yeah, look at that, that's cool. So alt click the whole skirt rim. That's nice. And maybe I'll go and do something to that. Maybe add a flare. That's nice. Well, nice-ish. Area of influence a bit wider, and go. Yes, maybe. That's too much, isn't it? There, cool. Made a flare. Great. Awesome. Let's see if that works now. So skirt, make sure I can leave Genesis visible, I think. Thank you, Sydney. Thank you. It's one of the things that this whole cancer journey has taught me, and my wife has also taught me that. You mustn't give up. You mustn't give up. You just gotta, you know, if something doesn't work, you just keep going on. It doesn't matter. There comes the point eventually where it will work out. Skirt flare. So I'm glad I can inspire you with that. That's very nice. Part of the process. Keep vertex order. Make sure selection only is selected so that Genesis doesn't get exported. That may well have been our downfall with the other dress we had before. Do you know, I've just realized, have we just made a different mistake? We have made a different mistake, didn't we? This has been exported in high res, hasn't it? Mesh resolution. Base shape matching. Oh, that's mesh smoothing. Mesh resolution, high resolution. Yeah. Abort. Do it all again. Go to base. Do it all again. High res skirt. Determination paying off. Let's go and do this again. Yes, overwrite. Same settings. Perfection. Skirt X. Otherwise, we're going to see a geometry mismatch error. Import. OBJ skirt. Have just overwritten that. Perfection. Edit mode. Yeah. Nice. So alt click one of those faces will, oops. Alt click one of those faces will, oh come on. Alt click one of those faces. Why does it do that? Was it control click? Why does alt click reckon? There we go. Blender, what are you doing? S and make it flare. There. Flare baby, that's what I'm going to call it. Flare baby. Export wave from OBJ. The OBJ skirt flare. 100 on the scale. Vertex order. Export. Yeah, that's what I did, Chris. And on the front of the skirt, let me try again. On the front of the skirt here, alt click produces that. But then on the back of the skirt, alt click produces that. Answers on a postcard. Do you know what? Absolutely, yes. And I think Callie, the fair woman, told me this the other day. No, not me. She left it as a comment on a forum thread. Jay usually leaves his mistakes in when he makes videos. That's kind of a compliment, because even though they are long, and many people hate me for my long videos, they like the 30-second approach to this is how you do things. I can't really do that. So she said, hey, Jay usually leaves his mistakes in so that you know how to fix things, because usually what happens is 3D programs, you just plow through and things inevitably go wrong. And that's what I appreciate about Chris's streams as well. We just keep at it, and eventually you come up with something that's usable. But you have to go through all this huge amount of things not working to eventually get to success. Skirt flare. And here we need reverse deformations. Yes. Accept, and morph created successfully. Wow, that is good. Now we have our morph, and does it flare? Does it? Buffalo, that's awesome. So it has worked. It has worked. Long story short, it has actually worked. Let's bring our character back. And nobody explodes here also. That's quite nice. So the skirt flare does nothing explodes. It just works. That is quite nice. It's very cool. If you wanted to change something about the slider here, by the way, if you don't want the slider to go negative because that just doesn't look good, you can go into the parameter settings and then just say minimum is 0, and you can also set the location of that. So you don't really want it in Morphs morph loader. You want it in maybe, I don't really know where. You could put it into actor skirt morphs, for example. And then the name could be skirt flare. So if you change that, then in here the morphs item will be completely gone. And now if you go into actor, you have skirt morphs, and that's how you can then, you know, make it a little bit prettier in the presentation department. Yes, exactly. Party time. I love it. You know, it really helps me to have tips and tricks from you guys and guidance, helpful guidance as I do this. This is partly why I've decided to do this type of content creation now. I really enjoy hanging out with you and hammering these things out together. Yeah, you know, with mistakes edited out. Now we leave them all in. My friends, I think that is all I have for today. Next time, I'd love to explore this with the current version of ZBrush, and see if we can make that happen, as well as with Hexagon, because these things bringing in morphs in and out, they're so much easier if you have this one-click solution. I don't think I have ZBrush installed with this version of DAZ Studio. It's with another version of DAZ Studio with a publishing build. So I'll see if I can make it operate so that I can send it to and from this version, and then we can have a look at that next Saturday. If you're up for a bit of Subnautica, do join me tomorrow at 10 AM Eastern Standard Time, where we're going to go back to Marguerite's original underwater base, because I think we haven't quite explored that. Wonderful to see you all. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you hopefully very, very soon. Take care, my friends, and thank you for being here. Bye-bye.